I'm Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic. Welcome to Common Solution Workshop. As usual, I'm going to start off with a story, but this is not like a parable story. This is actually a really story. Well, not the other ones aren't, but this one's about a person named Robert Holbrook Smith. We know him as Dr. Bob. So, May 12th, 1935, Bill Wilson met Bob. Was going to be a 5-minute conversation, turned into 5 hours. Bill worked on Bob for several weeks. Bob could never really maintain too much sobriety, but he did well for off and on. They tried to sober a guy named Dr. Mick, and they went to all the Oxford group meetings in the area. They started looking at the Oxford group steps again. On June 2nd, 1935, Dr. Bob hopped on a train to attend an American Medical Association convention. Bill and Bob's wife Ann, tried their best to persuade him not to go. And because what happened on trains back then, people drank, lots of drinking. And Dr. Bob was like, I'll be fine. And once on the train, he lasted 5 minutes, all the way to Atlantic City, quite a far ride from Akron. He drank the whole week. The whole week was a blackout. And so he came back on June 7th and detoxed for 3 days. And Bob was scheduled to perform surgery on the morning of June 10th. And in order to ensure steadiness of hand, because he is a proctologist, Bill gave him a beer and a shot. That would be Dr. Bob's last drink. And that would be on June 10th, 1935. That's known as the founding days of Alcoholics Anonymous. And usually the story ends there, but there's more to this story, way more to this story. Usually when Bob did surgery in the early morning, he would be home around 8 p.m., maybe 8 p.m. And he would always call Ann and let her know what time he's gonna be home by. No phone call, nothing. 9 o'clock, no Bob. 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, midnight, no Bob. A little after midnight, Bob comes in the house stone cold sober. Question is what was he doing? He was doing the one thing he swore he would never do: make amends. He made amends. Remember, he was a member of the Oxford group. They did restitution, same thing. But he made amends to his medical staff and other work associates. He was so worried about being this doctor that, everybody would be like, oh my God, Dr. Bob, he's a drunk. But, he made amends to medical staff, other work associates. He went to his patients' houses, because he did house calls, friends, family. He made amends because he was a secret drinker. And he had what he felt was their trust. Dr. Bob was known as a very well-to-do person. So there's a closet, his drinking was very covered up. And he drank more because of that. And members of, he was, like I say, he's a member of the Oxford group, amends his restitution, and he just could never bite into that. He was afraid people would know he drank and he would lose his practice and all the fears that came with it. The excuses drunks have. But on that night, he didn't care about his reputation. I think we all reached that place where we don't care about our reputation, what people think anymore. He made amends and he went to any lengths. The biggest amends he made that night was when he joined the Oxford group. He went because Ann was going, his wife. But he also went because maybe I'll find, some new customers, patients there. But he started to like it. But he closetly always lied. And he went up to the pulpit. You're not supposed to go to the pulpit of the Oxford group until you've done your confession and made amends and come back to him and said, I did it all. He walked up there and they went to grab him to tell him not to go up there. And they said, let him talk. And he made amends to the entire Oxford group of Akron that was together that night. Very powerful. Dr. Bob's missing link to his recovery, a guy that could do the Oxford group steps like the back of his hand. but he could never apply the amends. There's always anyone that's a closet relapser. I've never known one single closet relapser that didn't have one little thing that was missing in their recovery. So I've never known anyone that did the steps and relapsed. People say, I did step 10 every day. I mean, I did the steps, but did you do step 10 every day? And they're like, no. Or did you do 11 every day? No. Did you sponsor? No. So let's kind of do a quick recap of what we covered. I'm kind of got to go to the spirit of Chuck C here and talk about uncovering, discovering, and discarding, which is his big thing. Chuck C in the book, A New Pair of Glasses. Read it if you haven't read it. But step 4 started our rigorous emotional house cleaning to what? Uncover. And that means reveal the truths about our resentments, harms, and fears in sex conduct. And what was being revealed? That we're driven by instincts, right? In step 5, thanks to the assistance of another person, that other person is probably one that brings God into the room because he's spiritually awoke and God's flowing through him. And that experienced person who's gone through the process, we discover, become aware. Awareness is the key, that those instincts have controlled our thinking and blocked us from God. And thanks to that new awareness, the awakening slowly begins. But when we're armed with the facts about ourselves and we ask God for the strength to, or we got the strength to let God, discard these things, get rid of, let go of our defects, 6 and 7, uncover, discard, uncover, discover, discard, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now that spearheads you into a 4th part called repair. Repair our past. Repair means to fix something. If I uncover the truth about my thinking, if I discover what drove my thinking, if I discard my thinking, wouldn't it make sense to go repair the destructiveness my thinking created? Think about that. Benjamin Franklin, great quote here. How few there are who have courage enough to own their own faults and resolution enough to mend them. Think about that. How few there are who have courage enough to own their own faults and resolution enough to mend them. 100%. Let's go to page 82. I'll give you time to get there. All right. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring through the lives of others. I'm sure there's people in here who've experienced tornadoes now and then, real ones, the actual tornadoes, not just us. They're no joke. And he's comparing the destructiveness of a tornado. Our drinking, our harms, our resentments to the destructiveness of a tornado. Think about that, because tornadoes, winds can be 300 miles an hour. And their pathways can go like a mile, like literally a mile wide and 500 to 100 miles long. And tornadoes do about $400 million of damage a year. Sadly, they kill thousands. People get injured when they're struck by debris, roofing tiles, broken glass doors, etc. Houses and businesses with people who put their lives into are destroyed. Large buildings are gone. Bridges are completely ripped out from the ground. Trees are uprooted. Beautiful trees. Cars and trains are not only flipped, but they're thrown for miles. They tear up everything in their path and completely changing people's lives forever. Read it again. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted, selfish and inconsiderate habits have left the home in turmoil. What did your destruction look like? What did your destruction cause others? How many miles did it spread? Whose lives changed forever because of just bumping into you? Think about that. It's a lot to take in there. It's a lot to take in there. You know, what does your path of destruction look like? Did it look like a tornado? If so, why would you not want to make amends? Look what it says here. We feel a man is unthinking. Another word for unthinking is inconsiderate. We think a man is inconsiderate when he says that sobriety is enough. Remember, sobriety is just a beer. It's just a beer, just a byproduct of spirituality, just a byproduct of it. It says he is like the father who comes out of a cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. That means completely gone. But he comes up out of the basement, the cellar, to his wife. He says, "Don't see anything matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?" Can you imagine not making amends for your destruction? The most self-centered act you can do is, after writing down the stuff that you write down, discussing it with another, crying over it, feeling victimized your whole life, frustrated, and seeing the truth of what drove you and go, "Oh my God, I am to blame." Seeing all that and what it did, knowing the destruction behind you, and then not making amends, looking at your list and just saying, "Nah, I'm good." You know, I've never known a person who did the steps, you know, I'm going to say it again, who used to, you know, and use again. You know, it's crazy what people say in recovery. "I'm sober. Look at me. I'm alumni of the month. I got 6 months. It doesn't matter who I hurt. I'm sober now." You hear it all the time. You hear crazy shit all the time like that. You know, now that I'm sober, it won't happen anymore. So why do I need to go do that? I don't need to do the steps. I'm just going to, you know, I'm just going to accept this is the answer to my problems. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. That's the type of person who says, "I'm always recovering," because they are. And they got 8 years of sobriety. Look around the rooms. I mean, the people that don't do the steps put fear in newcomers by saying, "Oh, wait till you get to that 4th step, or that amends is going to be tough." And they never even done it. Alcoholics and addicts destroy lives. They see the destruction behind them, and they know who they hurt and the pain on the person's face. They still won't make amends because they're content with sobriety. That's sad. That's not anything to be proud of. But, you know, why do they do it? Because they live in the delusion. What's another word for delusion? We talked about this before. Insanity. Something that's deluded is insane. But they live in the delusion that being sober somehow counterbalances the scale of destruction they caused. And people around us are relieved that we're not drinking anymore. They're happy for us. Our family's happy. You know, he's back after rehab. You know, this is going on. That's going on. Yeah, we stopped drinking. But do they forget the pain? Do they forget the pain? The hurt? We have to make it right. Not just because we'll drink again, because it's the right thing to do. You know, the thought of setting right or wrong can be scary as shit. So if it's scary, it takes away fear. It helps with our fears. You know, but think about it. What else was scary? Quitting alcohol? The thought? Scary. Quitting drugs? Scary. So it's turning our life over to God. We did that, right? So it's writing down this inventory and all this stuff we wrote down. We did that. Talking, you know, just going over with someone that we just met, we barely know. And then scary is letting God remove these defects and not knowing what's going to happen. Amends is our last big hurdle. Why stop there? Why stop there? I made amends. I mean, I did a lot of bad things, but I was drowning. I couldn't breathe anymore. And amends is one of the most beautiful things that I have ever done. And when I got deep into amends, it was when I started to see I was reaching a different level of growth. I was somewhere else spiritually, you know, I started to recognize it and started like to remove walls I had built. I mean, I no longer believed that the world was conspiring against me. I no longer believed that I can't be helped. I'm just this way, or I've always been this way. You know, I stopped believing that I cannot be changed. I stopped believing I cannot escape there's no way to escape my problems, my mistakes. I stopped believing my errors was who I was, that I am these errors. I could see clearly why I had gone through what I did. And, you know, poor me was gone. But I saw that my life was not just a series of accidents, that I wasn't going to be any more known for my unmanageability. I was not just a series of accidents, that everything that ever happened to me in my life, I realized right in the middle of amends somewhere was happening to bring me to where I'm at right now and what I'm intended to do. That I realized that the behaviors of the ego, the arrogance and the self-importance and the high self-esteem faded away. And, you know, my past no longer kept me from living. I could walk down the street anywhere, from even the places they chased me out of. I didn't have to look over my shoulder. Feuds ended, that imaginary feuds I had. We all had those imaginary feuds. Old friends, relationships were restored. I had things that I did were forgiven. And you know what? When I made amends to those people, they didn't think it was that big of a deal. I made it a big deal because I felt so guilty. It was scary. It was intense. But each amend brought me closer to the spirit. It was then I knew I was a spiritual being with with very few, I don't want to say no external limitations, because there's some external limitations out here, but very few external limitations. But I know there is something greater that I can do, and I was put here to do. And I live today, this life today, I was destined to be a part of this because of amends. Amends are necessary to living an honest, whole life. My future no longer is bound to what others do. And so many think step 9 is the harder way. The truth is step 9 is the easier, softer way, because it makes life easier and softer. And that's the truth. Let's go to page 76. There's a lot of information tonight, so I'm going to try to do my best not to fly through stuff too quick. So this paragraph in 76 starts off with a time frame. For one thing, look at the paragraph above. It says we completed step 7 with that prayer. It says now we need action. I'm sorry. Now we need more action. Every time, when's the rest period going to happen? Every time it's like we want to relax, more action. That's beautiful. Now we need more action, without which faith without works is dead. That means we read that before. In the good book it says faith without good deeds is dead. Faith without works is dead. He says here, faith without action is dead. In page 93 of the book it says, for faith to be vital, it must have unselfish constructive action. 4 through 9, step 12. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all the persons we have harmed in whom we are willing, ready. That's a condition right there. Ready. Are you ready to make amends? We made it when we took inventory. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Step 4. That's all we did in step 4 was a self-appraisal. No one's holding our hand doing it. No one's telling us in our ear what to write down. It's our story. Now, and after that, we go over with somebody. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damages done in the past. We attempt. I love that word attempt. It's a very powerful word. Very powerful word. We go out and it's when I see the word attempt, I think it's going to be a challenge in a sense. So, but attempt to sweep away the debris which accumulate out of our effort to live on self-will. That's our instincts, to live on these misdirected instincts, pride, self-esteem, and all that, and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. What does that mean? When it says ask, it means prayer. You know, this is the 8-step willingness prayer. We haven't the will to do this. It's similar to the 6-step prayer. If we still cling on something, we'll not let go. We ask God, help us be willing. Always have the willingness behind it, right? This one is the second part of the 8-step. And if we don't have the willingness, we pray, you know, until it comes, till the willingness is there. And sometimes it is there. We just need to embrace it, right? Remember, it was agreed at the beginning that we go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. Victory over alcohol. Remember, it said on page 44, we're suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. It tells me victory can happen. And right here, we agreed at the beginning to go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. Remind me why we did this in the first place. We want victory. I'm going to put up the slide. All right. Step 8. Made a list of all people. First of all, what stands out the most? Well, the word list, we know what a list is. You know, my mom used to say when I was a kid, you're going to be on my list. Made a list of all people, not some, not, you know, you pick, pick what you want and leave the rest. No, it doesn't say that at all. All people we have harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Amends means to make right or wrong. I'm gonna probably say that 10 more times tonight. Amends means to make right or wrong. When people look at step 8, they see the last part of it. I mean, the list part of it, not the last part, the list part of it. But the willingness part of that prayer we just mentioned, everyone, we need to pray for that, right? We're gonna cruise over to page 83. Third paragraph. We're going to be jumping back and forth all around in this, stuff tonight, because when I do a book study on 8 and 9, it's usually 3 weeks. So I'm cramming this all into 1 hour, or maybe a little over an hour. Depends how crazy it gets. So there may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves, we could write them if we could. Now, here's the thing. Alcoholics love loopholes. They also love to take out words in the big book. And, here's the thing. People read this back and they think it says there's some wrongs we can never right. There's not a wrong you can't right. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. Let me give you an example. Let's say I hustled Jimmy out of $1 million. I don't have $1 million. I can't make it fully right, but I can do something. I can start a payment plan with him. I can give him whatever, a few $1,000s. Again, fully right is what it means. And, the thing is I'm going to say a controversial statement. I've heard a lot of guys say this recently. There's really no such, you don't get caught up in the BS of living amends. And because what people say is if I can't fully write, I just need to go and cook my dad dinner every night. That's something you should be doing anyways, right? And they say, I'm just going to practice the principles on all that's something I should be doing anyways. Living amends is just living the spiritual life. It's like, it's just a way to get out of making face-to-face amends and doing things that we should be doing anyways. So I say, sorry, I stole your bike. I'm not gonna, I'm making a living amends. I'm no longer gonna steal bicycles. I love what Charlie P says, a story of a woman working in a bank. And she was making a living amends that she's not stealing from the bank anymore. That doesn't do good for the bank. There's another one. I think that there's another story he mentioned too about, someone stealing golf clubs out of someone's garage, and the guy made I'm making a living amends. I'm no longer stealing golf clubs. Well, where's my golf clubs? you know, the thing is, it's very sad, very sad. And, that it goes that way. So give me 1 second. My thing's being kind of weird right now. All right, back to the regular scheduled program. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. That's the deceased, right? That's the deceased. We'll get into that in a minute. And there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay them if we could be avoided. I'm going to close this. Well, actually, I'm not going to close it because we're going to be somewhere else in a minute. We're going to look at this in a minute, so you can start looking at that now. But we should be sensible, tactful, humble, without servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anybody. We don't crawl anymore. We're no longer in diapers. So we take the list of inventory and we break it down to 4 categories. I'm not saying this is the right way, the wrong way. I'm going to zoom this in a little bit. No pun intended. So willing means ready. So I break it into 4 categories. I'm going to show you real quick. Willing, unwilling, creditors, and those who cannot be seen. No physical contact. So willing, let's talk about that for a second. Willing, I mentioned a minute ago. It means to be eager, inclined, ready to do something. The ones I can do now. A recurring problem I come across with those I take to the steps is, as well as others in recovery, is they think approaching a person and asking how I can make it right, and they come across and they cross a person off the list, right? And I say, well, what did the person say for you to do? And they believe the wrong has been made. I mean, the wrong's made right. Has it? No. All they've done is gathered the information. So that's why it says, I put down Joe Blow here, and I ask him how I can make it right. And it's usually blah, 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 how I can make it right. Selfish, self-seeking or something. And he says, give me the $200 back you owe me. Here's the $200, action completed, date. Now, we'll get more into like what people might say. Some people might just say, keep doing what you're doing. You might just say 5 fifth steps I got to do now. And you put it in there. And date completed. It's important to know the date when you completed the amends. Because some people go, I still got this resentment. I can't shake it. I made the amends 10 times to this person. Because you ever complete it? Did you ever complete the amends? If I'm writing down the same person each week on my 10th step, did I ever really complete the original amends? How many of the amends have I completed? On here, it's got all the stuff on there. Some people will tell us exactly how to make it right, and some people won't. And like someone might say, hey, stay in contact with me. So I call the guy 5 times. I'm probably calling more, but that's the way I complete the amends. It's very simple, and it really makes it understandable. This is my favorite sheet I didn't have it first. Now, Joe and Charlie call this deferred. I call it unwilling, and which means not eager, not ready, not inclined, I'm not ready to do this. So it must be postponed or deferred because of some circumstances, right? Maybe the person has a restraining order, or maybe they're in prison, whatever it is. But we pray for willingness to do these things. We can do them in time. What usually happens is the people I sponsor will put down all these names on here, and then they'll read back the reasons why they can't make amends. And they get to the 4th or 5th one, they go, you know what, they get embarrassed because they're making excuses. They're making excuses. And that's the truth. What I find happens is the unwilling ones miraculously float over to the willing ones. Or you drive miraculously, your car drove that person's driveway, it was on your unwilling list, and you make amends. Let's look at the next one. The one we love, creditors payback. Let's go to page 78. Now, I'm going to read something that's a complete shock to everybody. Here's the shock. Most alcoholics owe money. Big surprise. Breaking news, right? We do not dodge our creditors. So the question is, this is 1935. What's a creditor? And I like to kind of bring it to back then what it was. Anyone owes money. You know, it's a person or institution in which a commitment, promise of debt was owed. Bank, job, friend, sister, you know, spouse, child support, whatever it is, parent, exes, sores, everything, drug dealer. And here's one thing I want to mention. There's no difference. It's all stealing. It's all stealing. There's no difference between taking money off your mom's dresser and not paying her back when you borrow money. It's both stealing. There's no difference at all. If you made an agreement to pay it back and you broke it, that's dishonesty. And you can't be dishonest and God reliant at the same time. That's why we're making this amends. These ones here. So telling them what we're trying to do, we make no bones about our drinking. We're talking about the creditors. They usually know it anyway, they always do, whether we think so or not. Excuse me. Nor are we afraid to disclose our alcoholism on the theory it might cause financial harm. Look at this, and this has happened to me before. Approaching this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. I had a guy one time tell me, dude, you got like 2 weeks for this drops off your record. Are you sure you want to pay it? I said, yeah. And he's like, okay. I was told I was following orders. You know, that's what I'm supposed to do. Arranging the best deal we can. We let these people know we are sorry. Our drinking made us slow to pay. We must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go for reliable drink if we are afraid to face them. I have known several people in sobriety, yet they never, you know, made right with the people they owed money to. They walked into recovery and credit card debt, and they major credit card debt, and wait 7 years for it to drop off. That's not an amends. Not knocking, just saying. But I've known people also do their fifth steps who hustled people out of money and schemes. And what do? They declare bankruptcy. That's escaping your amends. You know, some people have to declare bankruptcy when they're sober. That's a different story in that circumstances. But to do it because of your unmanageability. But I've known people that owed money to their parents, and just because the relationship with them was better and they're talking, they don't need to pay them back the money anymore. Dad will always bring it up. Trust me. I learned that the hard way. I've known people that never paid back child support. That's not making amends. It comes back to haunt you too. I know people who owe money to former drug dealers. I was one of them, but never paid it. You know, paid it back because I can't go back in those neighborhoods. Just the rehab told me. That's not making it right. You know, all those relapse prevention crap. You can't go to these places. You can't go back to the bar to pay them back the money you owe them. Liquor store. I went to the liquor store to make an amends, and the guy put the bottle always bought up on the counter. And it was 4 months later since I drank. And as soon as he saw me, the bottle always went right up on the counter. I said, no, I'm here to make an, you know, I'm here to blah, blah, blah. But I know people that stole from stores, and because of fear of going back, they never made it, you know, they never made amends. And it's sad. You notice I say with those examples, I've known people because they're not around anymore. None of them. None of them. I know a guy, his versions of financial amends was walking into stores, and when the guy turned his back, put the money in the counter and leave. And it just didn't seem right. So many people have moved on and to, you know, the other place because they drank themselves to death after this. I've known people that because they didn't make financial amends, got into worse financial issues, and then started drinking again, and the worst financial issues, they just never made it back because they lived in that. You know, making amends, especially financial amends, this program demands rigorous honesty. And if we're not ready to do that, maybe this is not for us. That's the thing. It's not for you. My favorite one of all these is no physical contact, because I'm biased, because I had an experience with this big one. Somebody wish they could make amends to their mom or their dad or their granny or their whoever who has passed. And thanks to this process, we can do that. Not just do it, but feel them again. There's no feeling like telling them, telling a sponsor, yes, you can. I remember my first sponsor, I'm like, I would do anything to make amends to my grandma. My grandma practically raised me, and she, provided all these books I have, and I never read them at all. And she died while I was in rehab. It's a long story, but I said, I'd do anything to make amends to her. And he looked at me, and it's just one of those moments, and he grabbed me by the hand, and he goes, dude, I'm going to tell you, you can. And I did my, was out making amends, and there's a place out here about an hour away called San Pablo Dam, and that was our fishing hole. My grandma and I go out there fishing, and we would go behind this little hike to get to our fishing spot. So I thought, what a better place to go, the place where I could talk to her about anything, and that's the type of person she was. And so I decided to kind of write, beyond sending the letter of how can I make it right, I wrote her like a straight State of the Union address, and I had them both. And I get there, I pull my car in, and there's these people sitting there fishing. I never seen anyone fish in that spot. And I waited 5 hours for them to get done. I did not leave. It happened 2 or 3 times where I had to make amends to someone to wait for quite a while. But I sat there and waited. And when I got there, I closed my eyes and I sat there, and I had both pieces of paper in my hand, and I'm like, all of a sudden they both blew out of my hands and went away. And I sat there and I said, okay, you're real funny. And I closed my eyes, and the water's all choppy. And I just said, in the past with you, I was self-seeking, frightened. I never meant to make you think I didn't love you. Is there any way I can make it right? I sat there in silence for about 30 seconds, and all of a sudden the thought came, stay right with God. I'd never even heard those terms before. I know it was something she would say. And I was just like, wow, that was the first, amends I made, where I left with, the wings floating away, and after that, it was like, it was on. That was the 5th amends I made, was that one. So we're gonna look at this now. Step 9. It's kind of small. Make it a little bigger. There we go. Step 9. Make direct amends to such people whenever possible, no, wherever possible, except when to do so will injure them or others. So what does direct mean? It means to talk to someone in person. If I'm going to talk to someone directly, I'm going to speak to you in person, not over the phone, in person. Direct, face to face. Amends, as we said, means to make right or wrong. I want to tell you something. The next 10 meetings you go to where they read out how it works, count how many times they say whenever possible rather than wherever possible. I'm not kidding. There's a very good chance you'll get 10 for 10. People will read it back, and they'll just fly through it, and they see when, especially the newer people, they see wherever, they see whenever. Wherever was never in our vocabulary. It was always whenever. Because why? Because whenever is just a time that something must be done. Wherever is a place and a time. No escape from wherever. It's a place and a time that something may be done or completed. Big difference. The old saying, there's a time and a place for everything? There it is. I'm going to stop this one here. All right. Page 83. It says, yes, there is a strong period of reconstruction ahead. Don't let that scare you, right? We must take the lead. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry will not fit the bill at all. So I've had eager sponsees go make amends to their parents when they're on step 2. And I'm like, what did you ask them? Well, I said I was sorry. And I'm like, I had to break the news to them. It wasn't an amends. Now, when they say that, I wait to step 9 and explain to them then, because I don't like, one guy got mad and quit when I said that. So I learned my lessons when to say things to people, but I had to break it to them, you know. But you hear people with years of sobriety describing an apology. So many believe an amends is the same thing as an apology. It's not. And amends, they're oil and water, 2 different things. An apology is an admission of guilt, right? And amends means to make right or wrong. So sorry is another, it's an easier, softer way. You know, is there a word that we said more than sorry? How many times have we used it to our advantage? You know, sorry does nothing to fix a situation that you have caused. We've apologized our whole lives, and we love, you know, people we love to, you know. When I said sorry, it wasn't to get, you know, what I wanted to get something back, you know. So it's kind of like, oh, I'm sorry I stole your bike. I'm making a living amends, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's not the way it works. I'm sorry is downright insulting to a betrayed spouse, right? I'm sorry, I cheated on you for so long. Sorry is something we say when we bump into somebody by accident. Or you know, or something we offer when we're running late to somebody. That's what sorry should be, you know, kept for, not an amends. In step 9, there's no room for long-winded apologetic speeches. You know, I owe you $3,000. You know, do you want to hear a long-winded? You know, I mean, if I owe Jason $3,000, does he want to hear a long-winded apologetic speech, or does he want his $3,000? Right? You know, but one thing about apologies, you ever notice that an apology, there is a story with it, right? Which is interesting because the word has its roots in Greek, and it means story, right? And it entered English language in the Middle Ages. And an example would be if you broke someone's sword, let's just say, then you make an elaborate story to get yourself out of trouble. Pretty interesting, right? Because we use sorry for the same reason. Eventually, you know, the word got shifted to what it's now. It's not much different. So, but so you know, think about it. And it's not to knock anyone that's made amends in here their whole time saying sorry, as long as you ask them to make it right. But if you don't ask them to make it right, and you're just saying sorry, you haven't made amends. You haven't done anything to fix it. It's not about forgiveness. It's not about being sorry. It's about making it right. They're not for them, it's for us. But the cold reality is not many people are going to make amends. You know, the top causes for relapse, I think number 1, not completing your amends. Number 2 would probably be like step 10, not doing that. 3 would probably be not sponsoring. These are all neck and neck, but like amends, and then number 2 being, you know, not doing step 10, but then the other ones are all pretty close. Step 10, not sponsoring, you know, leaving stuff out of your 5th step, all that in there. But, you know, I didn't include step 4 in there, because if we skip step 4, we never did the steps to begin with. We never started it. I love when people say, I never got past, you know, I got stuck on the steps on 3. No, you just got to the door, you know? You know, why do people skip step 4? Because they're afraid of their resentments? No, they're afraid of making amends. Think about that. People don't do the steps because they fear it. But the one thing the book talks about is I think sound reasoning gets in the way of a lot of people. And this book talks about, you know, sound reasoning with the first drink. We lack sound reasoning, you know. You know, sound reasoning is following thinking that makes sense, of course, you know, logical, rational type stuff. Can sound reasoning, though, can our sound reasoning interfere with developing our relationship with God or doing the steps? I've heard this one before. I can tell my secrets to a stranger, they might tell others. That's kind of sound reasoning to say that. right? But then let's look at how sound reasoning get in the way of step 9. I can't go and face my ex. She might slam the door in my face, or she might turn me over to child support or call the cops. I can't make that amends. Or I can't make amends to the cops. They might get suspicious. These are all sound reasoning ideas, especially if that's the way your mind works. But or they say, I can't go in the stores I stole from. They might call the cops. So we balk at step 9 based on sound reasoning, forgetting that when we made our 3rd step decision to no longer make decisions based on self. Bill's story says common sense would thus become uncommon sense. Is it common sense to go to my enemies and make amends? No. Is it common sense to go to someone we hurt and face them and honestly admit our mistakes? No. Is it common sense to pay back drug dealers? All this stuff doesn't sound common sense. Let's go to 12 and 12 on page 23. And let's see what that has to say. You might wonder why I'm in the first step of there, but it says, page 23, 12 and 12, who wishes to be rigorously honest and tolerant? Who wants to confess his faults to another and make restitution for harm done? Who cares anything about higher power, let alone meditation and prayer? Who wants to sacrifice time and energy to trying to carry the message to the next sufferer? No, the average alcoholic, self-centered to the extreme, doesn't care for this prospect unless they have to do these things in order to stay alive himself. There it is right there. Under the lash of alcoholism, we are driven to AA, and there we discover the fatal nature of our situation. Then and only then do we become open-minded to the conviction as a willing to listen as the dying can be. We stand ready to do anything to lift this merciless obsession from us. I love that. Who wishes to be, who wishes to make restitution for harms done, unless we do these things to stay alive ourselves. I'll be working with a guy on step 2, and he turns to me and he says, and this is a sound reasoning stuff, kind of like, he says, hey, when I go make amends, what if? And I'm like, hey, dude, we're on step 2. Let's stay there. And she's preoccupied with stuff he's not even on yet. They already have outcomes play out in their head. So let's focus on the word what if for a second. It's always asked with amends. How many times you're in a meeting and some guy says, well, what if I make amends? And, what if I make amends and they say, what if it's speculation about a future event? Speculation. That's it. Just speculation. Our also word for speculation is rumor or gossip, about a future event. It's a theory. It's reasoning based on insufficient evidence, a theory. A theory is to accept beliefs that you do not know because you never experienced it yet. If you haven't made amends yet, you got nothing to say against it because you never experienced a theory. We justify not making amends based on theory. What if is a guess? I'm going to tell you something. There's no what ifs in recovery. There's no what ifs. What ifs do not exist in recovery, but there are absolutes. What is an absolute? Something that cannot, that is without doubt, a fact, something never changes. I don't deal what ifs, but I deal with absolutes. That's what I tell people when they ask me a what if question. I'm going to give you some absolutes. Here's an absolute. You hurt people. You resent people. That's an absolute. Here's another absolute. You made you have a list with names on it. Here's an absolute. When we make amends, we become free. Here's an absolute. Making amends is a key to permanent sobriety. Here's an absolute. If you don't make amends, there's a very good chance you're not going to make it. Here's an absolute. Amends is part of the formula. And step 9 is where beliefs and theories and excuses come to an end. We've been hiding behind that stuff for so long. You see all the stuff, I'm saying this stuff, I'm saying all the stuff I used to hide behind, sorries and theories and sound reasoning. But many think they have to, one thing about amends is the more guys I sponsor have gone through with other people, I'm not saying my way is right, but it's like people didn't want to give 5-minute amends to people. Or they go to a wedding and they make, I'm going to make amends to my uncle. And I'm going to sit down next to him, or I'm going to do it right when I walk in and I got to listen the whole time. That's not the way we do it. Wait to the very end, you know. But with the soul amends, I found God. Let's see what it says on 77. So we're on 77 now. I'll give you a second to get there. Where it says it is seldom wise to approach an individual who still smarts from our injustice to him, our harms, and announce we've gone religious. And the prize ring, we call that leading with the chin. Why lay ourselves open to be branded fanatics or religious bores? We may kill a future opportunity to carry a beneficial message. But a man will be sure to be impressed with a sincere desire to set right the wrong. He's going to be more interested in demonstration of goodwill than in talk of spiritual discoveries. I was just listening to a guy about a week ago, not related to AA, but he's talking about the power of restitution and amends. And he said, if you just go to a person and say, I want to make right with you from what I did in the past, they're like, oh, but if you go there and explain what you did and get it back into it, it's an automatic reaction and it goes south. It goes bad. So, I don't need to tell the person I'm trying to get good, I'm not gonna go up to the person and say, I'm here to make right with God or mention God at all. Do I say I'm in recovery? Do I say I'm doing the steps? Do I say I'm here to make an amends with you? I'm here to make step 9. Do I say this is life or death, or I'm a mission from God? None of that stuff. Why? They don't care. They really don't. And it makes it sound like I'm forced to do something. It just, and what causes to tell people why we're, I need to meet with you on Thursday to make an amends. And that's fear that we say that, because we think we're going to sound weird. But it sounds as if we're forced to do it. Do I tell them they are forgiven? Forgiveness is between you and God. And, that's the thing is, it doesn't have to be mentioned at all. It's not part of this. Do you focus on their faults and their wrongs? No, the amends is not about them. Do I say what I did? Absolutely not. Why? Injure them or others. Oh, I'm the one that was, messing around with your wife the last 10 years. That's going to go over real well. And the guy's 6'8", or I'm the one to the boss. I'm the one that had the expense account in here for a long time. That's going to go over real well. The belief is that we must confess to another what we did drives more people away from amends than anything else. I just did a confession with God and my sponsor. There's no reason for me to do that with the person that I hurt. Page 69 says, we must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided we still do not bring more harm in doing so, injure them or others. Page 69. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about more harm when doing so. There it is, injure them or others. If I go and tell the person what I did, why would I even need to do inventory? It would just be step 3, and I'm gonna go up to everyone, tell them what I did, and ask for forgiveness and whatever. I could just do it there as a prayer and it'd be great. That's not how it works. Here's what's worked for me, and again, this is not, it's not my way. It's just the way I was taught, and I'm not saying it's the right way or knock anyone's way, but I was always told to keep it like that short. And I was old school when I made amends, and my first year in early 2000s, 2000. I went to people's houses and knocked on their doors. I didn't, text them and say, hey, I didn't call them on Messenger. I didn't look them on Facebook. I hunted people down. I didn't care what they thought. I went against restraining orders. And I knew if I contacted that girl, somehow she would say, hell no. I might go to jail. But, the way it worked for me is in the past with you, I've been selfish, self-seeking, maybe dishonest. I throw in there, how can I make it right? I use the 4th column as because that person might be on 5 different resentments and harms. I've used that format with every amends I've ever made, and never had one go wrong. It works because it's short and to the point. And it's a perfect amount of information. And I've made hundreds and hundreds of amends. And I never had anyone say, get out of here and don't come back. You know, I think the people that say, one thing that kind of like makes me scratch my head when the person is, oh, that person wouldn't accept my amends. So you're telling them what you're making right, or you're asking them? I never understood that. That person rejected my amends. Does that mean the person doesn't want to talk to you? Or they said, you're not, I don't know. I just get confused. But it's straight out of the fourth column. You can't go wrong. But if amends is done improperly, it's not an amends, it's a mess. I'm going to give you some examples. Here's an example of a mess. I'm using these as real examples. Someone said this to me, when I first met you, I thought you were a jerk and I never liked you. I want to fix that. That's not an amends, it's a mess. Here's an amends. I was selfish. How can I make it right? How about this one? Here's a mess. 6 years I slept with your wife, like I said earlier. That's a mess. How do I make amends for that? I was self-seeking and dishonest. How can I make it right? Scary, but you do it. Another example of a bad amends is I hurt you in the past and I want to make amends. You're not asking how you make it right. The amends is I was selfish, da 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 da. How can I make it right? This is the one that it's a mess because I did it at the beginning and people didn't want to hear it. I'm a member of AA now and I'm here to make amends. They look at me like, one guy goes, so? I realize if I just say I was selfish, they're like, whoa, how can I make it right? Whoa, they don't give them time to think. It's not difficult. Let's go to page 77. Page 77, second paragraph. The real question is how to approach the man we hated will arise. Ooh, it may be he has done more harm. I'm sorry, that he has done us more harm than we have done to him. At least we think that. Even though that they attacked us first, we attacked them first and they retaliated, right? That's usually what happens. And though he may have acquired a certain better attitude towards him, we may still not be too keen about admitting our faults. Nevertheless, the person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. It's harder to go to enemy than a friend, but we find it much more beneficial. We go to him in a helpful, forgiving spirit, right? And we confess our former ill feelings and expressing without regret. So Bill mentions right there, we go to him in a helpful, forgiving spirit. Every amend, we want to always have that forgiving spirit 24/7. We want to live in the spirit of forgiveness. We want to live in that, right? We want to live in that spirit of forgiveness. And here's what I mean, right? Is Bill doesn't mention that, he mentions that we're in that spirit of forgiveness. And does that mean that, I think what he's saying is forgiveness has already taken place. Did Bill trick us into forgiveness? Did he? Step 6 is letting go of the past. Forgiveness is the process of letting go of the past, right? It's about freeing ourselves from the continuous pain we've experienced in others' hands. And that's more like step 6, right? So if step 6 is done correctly, forgiveness happens. I've already forgave the people that a lot of people I'm making amends to. You cannot let go of resentment without forgiving. Just saying. So we know about making amends for our harms, and this is a foreign territory for a lot of people. And I've suggested to a lot of people who got many years of recovery, and they start getting resentments. We don't harm as many people in step 10 with, our inventory, we write down, but we have a lot of resentments. And sometimes we have to make amends. And people go, you're crazy, dude. And the big book tells me to pray it away for 2 weeks. I don't got time to do that. I'm sorry. I'm not knocking, I'm just saying. A story in the back of the book. It's not in the program. Let's see what Bill tells us to do about making amends for resentments. Let's go to page 13. Let's see what the founder did. All right. Look what it says. My schoolmate visited me, and I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. That's step 5, right? We made a list of all the people I have hurt or towards whom I felt resentment is step 8. There it is right there. Made a list of all the people we hurt and whom we felt resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals admitting my wrongs. Never was I to be critical of them. I was right all such matters of my ability. That just said, then we make amends for resentment. Most of our original 4-step, they cross each other, harms and resentments. But I can reassure you this works way better than trying to pray them away for 2 weeks. Maybe if that works for you, keep doing it, But the big book, remember, let's go back in time a little bit. The big book hammers home the dangers of harboring resentment, right? How dangerous resentments are. They destroy more alcoholics than anything else. How resentment blocks you from making a connection to your power grade and yourself within. And the reason we make amends for resentment is because it's part of the spiritual malady. I want to remove that, meaning it gets between you and God. And when it came time for me to make amends, it made sense to make amends. I didn't question it. But we need to get past hatred towards others, feuds, revenge, and what they did. If you can't shake them in step 6, make amends. Just like there's no recovering being a victim, there's no recovery having enemies. Amends is the answer. The thing is most of the amends I made for resentments are ones that happen in step 10, and usually people I love and I'm really close to, friends and sponsors and stuff like that, and they know what I'm doing. I just want to get past it. But there's an old saying, if I'm spiritual and have enemies, I'm a hypocrite. Or let me go to the Bible. What's the Bible say? If you say you love God and hate your brother, I call you a liar. We're supposed to love all, even if we disagree with them. Love and tolerance is our code. And I mean, what did let's look at some of these prophets, what they said about love and tolerance. What did you say? Love your enemies, right? Pray for those that persecute you. If you love only those who love you, what reward is in that, right? If you're only kind to your friends, how are you different from anyone else? Buddha, shame on him who strikes, greater shame on him who strikes back. Live happily and not hatred towards those who, overcome anger with kindness, evil with good, falsehood with truth. The Tao Te Ching, Latus, the creator of the Tao, return love for hatred. I mean, the founder of the Self-Realization Fellowship, Yogananda, said, love in your heart. She said, no love in your heart, then you see the good in everyone. So embrace the love in your heart. You start seeing all of a sudden, hey, there's a blue sky. I never seen that before. Everything changes. Let's go to 77. Getting to the wrap up place here. I'm getting there. It's a little bit longer tonight than normal, but we got some deep stuff to cover here. So page 77. It says, at this moment, we're trying to put our lives in order, but this is not an end in itself. Here's one of the most important statements in this book, spiritual one. Our real purpose is to spiritually fit ourselves to maximum service to God and the people about us. So what is a purpose? A purpose is an aim or a goal towards to strive for, right? Fit means proper condition or state one's in physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like, fitness, almost like it's fitness. Maximum means the greatest amount possible, right? And services to provide duties of help, assistance to others, altruism. Page 63 told us that we had a new employer and that being all powerful, he would provide for us if we kept close and performance work well. That's God first, others second, my needs get met. What does that mean? That he provides for us. How do I keep close to God? right? Well, removing stuff in step 10 and hanging out with him in step 11. How do I do his work? Step 12, right? So keeping close to him, 10, 11. Step 12, performing his work well, sponsoring. Can I keep close to God if I'm not making amends? Can I do his work if I'm sitting on a bunch of amends that I won't make? Can I be maximum service to God if I have an enemy? If you are not making amends, you cannot be maximum service to God. And I don't mean, what I mean by not making amends, if you got some time, you're still sitting on a bunch of them. You might have a relationship with God, but are you maximum service to God? And why is it no? Because a part of your world you closed off. You've closed it off, right? Part of that world you close off could be a relative who desperately needs your help. But by making amends, I'm upholding my commitment when I took the third step prayer, which is my oath to be maximum service to God. People about God, offer myself to thee, to build with me, do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me the bonds of self, that may I better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, the victory over them may bear witness to those that help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. That cannot happen if I'm on amends. I want that to match that prayer to fall into place really in 6, 7, and 9, 10, 11, 12. Think of the 7th step prayer. My creator and I'm willing to have all of me, good and bad. We now remove every single defect of character which stands in my usefulness to you, my fellows, grant me strength to go out here and do your bidding. Can I do God's bidding, God's work, if I'm sitting on a bunch of amends in the past? No, I can't fully do it. And here's the thing, when a sponsee tells me I can't make amends, I say, either you meant what you said in the 3rd step prayer, you don't. A lot of people, get scared of that. If we don't, then we truly, maybe this way of life isn't for us, right? But if we did, then what matters the most is growing in this life, and amends is the price we pay for a new life. I said a little bit ago that a purpose is an aim towards a goal, something we strive for. Where there is a goal, there's an ideal, right? What is an ideal? I'm going to hammer, we hammered this a few weeks ago in the inventory. So this ideal is a principle or value that's already within us. And when we pursue it, we go to growth, like the ideal job, the ideal spouse, the ideal friends, right? It's where we truly want to be in life. But our goals provide us the obtainable measure to reach those ideals, right? So if our goal is to fit ourselves in maximum service to God and the people about us, then what is our ideal we reach from that goal? Freedom. Freedom. Making amends leads to freedom. Freedom is the capacity to live life without restraints, restrictions, open road. And one type of freedom we receive is spiritual freedom. That's the spiritual malady, the inability to connect to the spirit within me. When we do 4 through 7, we let go of stuff that removes us, but many things remain, right? Many things remain. Depression might still be there. Self-pity might be there. Misery. You might still have the obsession. The reason, reason I have those things is most likely the G word, not God, guilt. That powerful emotion of deep shame from committing a past wrong, eating me up inside in my gut. I've heard guilt called a useless emotion. It's not, because you can only have guilt by something's already taken place. It's not too late to change it. It's not a useless emotion. I can fix it. I can go to the physical world and make amends, right? Amends not only clears up my guilt, it clears away remorse, shame, fear, misery, all that stuff. When we get to step 11, I'll show you exactly what that looks like. But the book says when the spiritual malady is overcome, we try mentally and physically. We cannot have that happen without making amends. Meaning the malady to overcome the obsession goes away cannot happen without making amends. It's part of the formula. Samuel Shoemaker from the Oxford Group said it best. Listen to what Shoemaker said. Our relationship with God cannot be right unless our relations with others are right as well. For it's pointless to keep in touch with God so long as human relations, which must be right at the same time. That's Samuel Shoemaker found in the Oxford Group. But here's the other freedom we get besides spiritual freedom. We get freedom in the physical world. External freedom, right? One's within, one's without, right? If we make no effort towards making amends, we got a lot of people and places and things we have to avoid, and we start believing we're powerful people, places, and things, which is BS. But if I want to be free in the outside world, I need to make amends, clear off my side of the street. I don't want to, I said it's the beginning kind of, but I don't want to walk on the other side of the street anymore because on the other side, that person's over there. I don't want to leave a meeting because this person's going to be there. I don't want to not go to that party because fear this person might walk in. You know, I don't want to get that fear in the pit of my stomach when I see a person's face ever anymore. I don't want to leave a family gathering because, oh, they're coming. I don't want to skip my kid's birthday because the ex is going to be there. I don't want to have to look over my shoulder. I want to be able to walk or able to drive or whatever down any street, not skipping because down that block, people I've harmed. I want to go to weddings. I want to go to social events. I want to walk down the aisle at Walmart and I have to dip down the other side and avoid someone. You know, I had a guy that skipped his daughter's wedding because someone was going to be there he didn't make amends to. He was just walking down the aisle. But I want to be able to go to the store I stole from. There's no recovery in dodging people, places, and things. But because of amends, large areas of my life which were once closed off are wide open. I remember giving a ride to my friend, and he's still using and stuff. And I saw him walking on the streets, homeless, and we pull up to the grocery store, and I said, I got to go inside real quick. And cruise in with me. He goes, I can't. They don't let me in there because I know he stole. And I walked in there and I was like, found myself smiling because I used to be on that same thing as well as him. And I went there, made amends. And the crazy thing is that guy was in recovery for a minute and he says I was a liar, everything I say, because he couldn't fathom making amends. And he's just passed away recently. When all this, this crap is gone, we have freedom. All by sleeping on our side of the street. So we have, I like to mention there's kind of like 4 freedoms: freedom from guilt, the geographical freedom I just mentioned, freedom with people, and freedom with God. The spirit, ending of the spiritual malady, get full frontal God, not just a piece once in a while, that hunch or occasional inspiration. When we receive freedom within and the outside world, we become maximum service to God and the people about us. Meaning I can connect and grow God within, all by making amends. Almost done. Page 76. It says, remember, it was agreed at the beginning, we go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. Now we're going to go 3 more pages over. Remember that beginning, right? Now look what it says, 79. Reminding ourselves that we decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience. We ask to be given the strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the consequence may be. So we go from any lengths for victory over alcohol. And after a few amends, we go to any lengths to have a spiritual experience. See the shift in that? That's also the 9th step prayer right there, by the way. Reminding ourselves we go to any lengths to have a spiritual experience. We pray for the strength and direction to do the right thing. That's a great definition of spirituality, by the way. The strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the present personal consequence will be. That's a step 9 prayer. We may lose our position, our reputation, or face jail, but we must be willing. We have to. We must not shrink in anything. It's an old question: how free do you want to be? Amends enables us to put the past to rest, so the past will not be in our present distracting us, getting in the way of our recovery, getting in the way of our job, getting in the way of my relationship with my kids, getting in the way of talking to people, getting in the way where I have to act different because I never did anything to change. Remember, the only place we find God is in the present. I don't want my past to be with me. It's beneficial to have the past, but I don't want to be a part of me. I took responsibility for my actions and I freed myself and cleaned up my past. You go to any lengths to have this, you have freedom. By making peace with the past, it keeps the past from interfering where we're at today. I will tell you, making amends is the most beautiful thing I've ever done. And once, made a few amends, I could walk down the street and do all that stuff I talked about. And they're scary. There's no getting around that. The thought of going to them is worse than doing them. But so was, like I mentioned, quitting all that stuff and all the stuff we managed to do. Step 4 was scary. Step 5 was scary. Again, it comes down to how free you want to be. It's our last big hurdle. Let's go to meditation. We're going to end with that. We'll discuss, maybe share some amends stories once the cameras are off. All right. So let's just go back to the place we started at, thinking about some amends we might be sitting on. So an ideal one must obtain in the spiritual realm is maintaining the correct attitude in daily living. The key to achieve the ideal is making amends. And our inventory contains many harms we have done, as well as resentments because of harms done to us. So when we discuss it with another, we need to get to the root of the problem so we can remove that root. It's then we discover the spirit of forgiveness. Now it's time to make amends. What I want you to do is think of someone you're struggling with making amends to right now. The one you keep saying, yeah, I got to do that. It might be a long-standing problem of many years. Could be an amends you refuse to make. It could be to a person you harmed so bad you can't even conceive the idea of facing them. The idea causes great fear. Or you keep saying, I'll do it soon, when the time's right. Maybe it's a newer struggle that's just starting to manifest, and thinking about it right now just gives you fear. Maybe it's a recurring problem and you find yourself making amends to a certain person over and over again. All these have one thing in common. The amends is not for them, it's for you. Making right your mistakes, your shortcomings, your defects, so you can be free. Ask God now for willingness and the strength to make this amends. Don't forget, what you deem unfixable is fixable. What you dream as damaged can be reconciled. Feuds that you think will never end come to an end. You can have your dishonest acts exonerated. And then the relationships with lost children reconstructed. Those horrible domestic situations can be made right. Friendships reborn. Or maybe it's just the opportunity to move on, put it to bed. What I'm saying is let amends define who you are, not your past. It's way too short to let the past continue to have your mind. Do not let it trap you from living the life you're intended, to live. So stop being haunted by the ghosts of yesterday, tomorrow. Live in the now. Amends is the most powerful thing you can do for yourself on the spiritual path. If you skip amends and forget about, if you skip amends, forget about getting to a higher level of consciousness. It's about always getting a higher level. Each one is, I heard one guy say that each amends is another step, another step up the stairwell. Meaning if you stop, you're not going up the stairwell. But if you make amends, you reach places you never thought you could ever make. I mean, I'm close with this. No one can do it for you. Not God, only you. You are hardwired for spiritual progress. You're hardwired to make amends, even if you don't know it. To be a free person, free your mind, and let the world become, just watch your world become bigger. This is the ninth step, eight and 9 step prayer. God, help me be willing to make amends. Give me the strength and courage and direction to make things right with all whose lives I have caused chaos. Help me be responsible, tactful, considerate, humble towards all I face. Let me be mindful not to harm others during this process. Please show me the way of patience, tolerance, and kindness and love on this journey. Amen. I'm going to stop it right there.